From Rico and Perlo's House of Exotic NHL Picks Frolic. And today is not a betting show. I do a lot of these just straight hockey videos, and I like them. That's how I got into this to begin with straight hockey, how I got into betting. I have a lot of takes that are not popular, and a lot of people wouldn't listen. Because I'd say stuff and they'd say you're crazy and they would take off. But when I got into the betting world and I started being very successful at it, it gave me some validity as to what some of the things I was saying. And today we're going to be talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and what they may do in the off season. I just did Edmonton Oilers. I would go check that out. That was an interesting one. So I could say like what I think that Toronto should do, but really when it comes right down to it, for a general manager who I think is Shaka, I don't know. I don't even think they gave him a management title. They gave him some sort of senior advisor to the blah, blah, blah. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But it really comes down to what the owners and brass above you want you to do. So when they're hiring someone, they're saying, look, this is what we want to do. How can we go about doing it? So if you're thinking, you should probably rebuild completely and break it down, they're not going to hire you. They have their mandate, and I think in Toronto, that's just not going to happen. As much as you or I or anybody may look at their roster and everything and say that's what they should do, they're not in the business of doing that for a lot of reasons. And I'll say this first before we move on to what I think could happen here, or maybe a way that they can stay relevant, maybe even be successful and not do a full rebuild. This is a direction I would go. I would think they're going to go, and I would go. So first of all, we'll go into the big news that they won. They won the draft. Oh yeah, I wanted to say I have always thought that Toronto's main focus and main issue, even I would say, is that they are whores to the sponsorship money that they get. I imagine, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I hear it a lot about sponsors in Toronto. Even the fans that go there, they call them the teetotalers or wine and cheese crowd. A lot of them are people that are families of the sponsors or business people that have been given tickets from sponsors to go to the games. So that seems to be why the crowds are not the loudest in the world, especially during the week. You have a lot of people at the games that are not really even huge hockey fans. They're just there for the spectacle. But if you're a sponsor, let's look at it this way. If you're a sponsor and you've given crap loads of money, this would be advertisers and all of that kind of stuff like that, to be aligned with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which benefits them, because if you are aligned with the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're a Canadian business or American business coming in Canada or anything like that. Being aligned with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is like the quote, quote, center of the universe, the biggest market that there is in Toronto, then you probably want things done a certain way. And it appears to me, this is just what appears to me, that what they want first is sexy players to marketable players like Marner, Nylander, Matthews, even big contracts. Big contracts are sexy, newsworthy, all of those sort of things like that. Fast, highly skilled players. And I think that I have a feeling like when Dubas left, he basically in his own he said that he felt he didn't have enough control in Toronto. In other words, there was those that are making decisions or influencing decisions above his head. And I think that's the biggest problem in Toronto. So that being said, if you are a sponsor like that, if you're forking over millions and millions and millions of dollars to be aligned with an organization, are you thinking rebuild? No. In fact, I wouldn't doubt that they would opt out if they were going to go that direction. So you're talking about losing millions and millions of dollars. Now, as of late, the plan, I think that Dubas was given, his challenge was to have these high market players and be successful at the same time. And honestly, I think it's possible he may have succeeded if it wasn't for COVID. COVID chopped the cap and he had nothing left, and they were a top heavy team and weren't able to succeed. So now here they are. You have, okay, the same sponsors that want all these marketable players. Marner took off. Public perception, I think, was a big part of that, of Marner, scapegoat someone so we can not look so bad. And now you're not making the playoffs. Things don't look good. Public perception is down. Those are the big things for these sponsors. They do not want public perception to be down. Losing will do that. So in a rebuild, if you do a full rebuild, you're for sure losing. And you're selling off players and trying to find young kids to come up, and then you got to repackage everything all over again. And I just don't think that's going to be the mandate. So that being said, Sheikha or whoever is going to actually be making decisions there, how do you get yourself out of this mess that they're in? And short of trading off players like Matthews and stuff like that, I think I've kind of come up with a way that hopefully will work, that can help them build their farm, depending on how they do down the road. So let's look at, I got the Toronto Maple Leafs here on the great Puckpedia. Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay. So I guess the first thing we got to look at here, and I probably should have had it up right away, was their cap projection. They have 22 million available cap space going into next year, which is great. Awesome. They may or may not want to sign Matthias Michelli, who got better. I was actually accurately pointed out because I thought he just wasn't very good, but looking at his underlying data and everything, he actually improved throughout the year. So depending on his price tag that he's willing to sign for, it might be something, but like you said, you only have 22 million to go with. Nicholas Robertson's looking for, you could qualify him and move on from him. I looked at him and I watched him and his underlying analytics. A lot of skill, but his overall game lacks a lot. I personally would hope that maybe you might be able to pull a second from him somewhere, that somebody thinks that he's got some more growth. At 24 years old, I'm just not really, jumping up and down for his growth so far in his development. So, there could be teams out there that are interested. I have a feeling you're not even going to get a second for him, to tell you the honest truth. Jacob Quillen, fourth line guy or whatever. So not huge there, names to resign, and not much to resign elsewhere. So you've got maybe 20 million if you saw, or 19 or 18 million if you sign Michelli. Problem, of course, is it's not a great free agent year this year. So let's look at their depth chart, and we'll go from there. Okay. Oh, I forgot. I know I can be all over the place here. First things first. Now, I think that they're likely going to take the in the draft. The first things first is the draft. Of course, they won number one pick. They won the number one pick, which is awesome, and they got people saying, "Oh, it's fixed" and stuff like that. I don't understand. How would you figure that they would fix it for Toronto? The league, what's the bet? They are going to do well in Toronto. I'm building more of a fan base by putting Gavin McKenna in Toronto if they choose Gavin McKenna. Here's the thing. If they choose Gavin McKenna, I think it's like he's the sexiest pick, which means I think maybe possibly that's who they pick. Shaka was brought in as an analytics guru guy, just like Dubas was. However, like I said, when Dubas left, he basically gave the impression that his hands were tied and he wanted more control over what things happened and stuff like that. And I hope that they give Shaka that opportunity. Maybe now that they've missed the playoffs and they look like they're heading south, that they may do that. And if they do, I am saying now that McKenna is not going to be your pick. And I personally, not that I don't like McKenna, I personally would go with Stenberg. Stenberg has a more complete game. He's more physically ready for the NHL. I talk to a lot of scouts. I do, and Ron from R&J Media is on there. He actually interviews prospects, and he gets to know a lot of scouts and stuff like that. And from what I understand, they're like top end, he has the potential to be a winger version of Barkov. Like he's that good 3-zone defensively. Now, McKenna, I've heard varying things. Most common I've heard is that if he's developed properly, and he has a lot of work to do because his overall game still leaves a lot to be desired, although he's getting better. He needs to gain weight. He needs to put muscle on, they say. I mean, I've heard that before, and then these kids we watch him. I see a guy that's just got amazing mitts, man. Like he makes moves, and his passing is absolutely fantastic, and it certainly would go a long way to have somebody like that for Matthews, assuming he develops the rest of his game. And if he does, I've heard the name Kucherov mentioned. Kucherov-esque. However, saying that it will take a while for him to get there for his overall game. If he didn't, this is kind of, I've heard Mitch Marner without the defense, which I don't think is going to ring well in the ears of Toronto Maple Leafs fans, but actually a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans I talk to don't even realize that Marner was as good defensively as he was, which was real weird because he was like top 10 in Selke voting every single year, even though I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the writers that are making that vote. It's still a thing, and his underlying average fans are not analytics people, but his underlying analytics were always extremely good, and his deployment was insane. He was always going against other teams' top lines and more than a lot of top players do in the regular season, and kind of burning himself out. But if you don't have that defensive aspect to your game like Marner does, and you're just offensive, Marner does play a little bit of perimeter game, and so does fact, his 5 on a lot more. Many of the scouts that I talked to say that he should go to college one more year, which is crazy when you can. He had like 52 points, 36 games. But just saying, I personally would go with Stenberg based on what I've heard. But now, if you've got people that are sponsorship driven, McKenna is probably the sexier pick and the more marketable player. He's North American for one. He's Canadian, and you're a Toronto franchise. Pretty good looking dude, and he's far more flashy than Stenberg is. I would take Stenberg, but I just wanted to bring that up before we got into the rest of this. So going back to Toronto, through this, I'm going to say what I would personally do. Personally, I'd be having a talk with Nylander, and I'd be looking to move on from him. For the same reason, especially if you're going to draft McKenna. Because if McKenna is really going to be a guy who doesn't pay attention to defense at all, like Nylander, a floater, or anything like that, I just don't think you can afford two of those guys on you at the same time. I don't care how offensive they are. In the playoffs, that ain't gonna matter. It's not. You see it over and over and over again. These high-flying offensive teams, they go to the playoffs and they don't make it. They get crushed. About the closest one in the last decade was probably Colorado. But even they had Landeskog, Nichushkin, Landeskog in his prime, Nichushkin, Lehkonen, Kadri. They had very good three-zone defensive players to go around Rantanen and McKinnon, who honestly were not paying attention, not really being utilized by their coach defensively. McKinnon has shown that he can do that, but it seemed allowing all the other players to play and trim the puck, and it worked. So, but when you look at the Florida Panthers, that's not like that. There's only one player that I would say that is not the greatest three-zone defensively, and that would be, I say three-zone because defense takes a defensive mind in all three zones is the best type of defensive player. Bergeron is a great example of that. Jonathan Toews. But Verhaeghe would be the only guy, and then after that, every single one is average or better. Every single player on their forward group. Unbelievable group of 9 forwards that can play solid, a relatively solid shutdown game. And I wouldn't. But that being said, what I would do is not going to matter here because William Nylander is an extremely marketable player. He's flashy. He's offensive. He's making big scratch. Good looking dude. More likely, it's going to be a no-no, and you're going to have to build around it. So Nylander, right now they have him with Matthews. You got to play him with Tavares. I mean, Tavares has been just amazing at his age. What he has done and played as well as he has with Nylander on his lineup without complaining or anything has been awesome. And Matthews appears to get irked by that because by having Nylander on his line. If you notice, Nylander goes up there for a little bit and then he's right back down again. Matthews at his best is very solid there. When I was playing with players like Nylander, it was so frustrating to do all the work down low, to be in your spots in the neutral zone, to play a full sheet, play hard, and this guy just floats up there waiting for the puck. That being said, he is an amazing offense. His offensive talent and skills are through the roof. No doubt about it. It's just like what Florida figured out with Huberdeau in uh, in Florida when they got Kachuk, that Huberdeau is sort of the same thing. Floater is from hell, really relied on Barkov way too much. And it just, you can win with players like that if you surround them with players that are like Landeskog, Lehkonen, and stuff like that. But if you have too many players like that on your team, I don't care how good they are offensively, you're probably not going to win a cup. Probably not. So, you got Matthew Nyes was apparently, they were throwing him out there to try to make some moves at the end of the deadline last year. I'm not sure if that would be a direction that they would want to go to. The fact that that was out there, and it was apparently true, tells me that they're trying to get like 3 or 4 solid young players like to fill out this roster to make it so it's super fast retool. Nicholas Robertson, like I said, he's got a lot of offensive skill, but not really. Not really. His overall game is very lacking. I would move on from him. So what do we do here? You could sign Michelli. I wouldn't like. I'm not totally against that, but I would not want to sign him with trade protection, because my plan here is to look for free agents that if things go south and they are missing the playoffs next year, you can trade them at the deadline for picks, because they don't have picks. That's another thing. Yeah, they got McKenna now, but next year their pick is, let me see, 2007. Yeah, their pick goes to Boston or Philadelphia or something like that. And there's a good chance that they don't get that pick. They don't have their 2028. They got 2 second rounds, and one of those is conditional as well. So if they're going down the road of rebuilding, it's imperative that they find a way to get some picks if it doesn't work out for them to make the playoffs. So if you're going to sign Michelli, $4 million tops, I would say. 39 points. He did play a little better down the road, but I'm not going to go through all the analytics for everybody. I do have JFresh. He played against average competition. Like I said, he got better and better. So you could give him like a prove-it contract, $4 million. If it's not working out, maybe he increases his value enough that you can pull the second for him at the deadline. He is a replaceable player. Max Domi would be gone as far as I'm concerned. To me, he's a glorified fourth liner. He's got sick playmaking skills, but the rest of his game is horrible. But he's also ingrained in that Toronto culture with his father, Ty, who, by the way, was one of the apparently one of the catalysts for why they signed Shaka. He was talking in their ear, Ty Domi. Max played for Shaka in Arizona. So when he first came in the league, I believe he was drafted by Arizona. I could be wrong about that, but he certainly played for him, and his father probably was there. That was when Shaka was there. So it's very likely that he had a good read on him and said that they should go that direction, and that's part of the reason why they choose Shaka, apparently. But so, I mean, I would play him as a fourth liner. I would prefer to trade him if I could find anybody that could take him. I don't think they're going to do it. And then you have this defense that is really bad, potentially bad. Let's put it that way. Christopher Tanev hurt all year. He's a guy that never did rely on his speed too much, but 37 years old. I mean, even when he was even a little bit younger, 3-4 years ago, he's one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league. But is he going to be able to be that now? You got Jake McCabe, who's, good second, third pair again, but neither one of those guys moved the puck all that great. Brandon Carlo, that was a terrible move. And of course, Morgan Riley, there's talk about him moving on. And I don't blame him. At 7.5, he's not a very good. He plays basically no defense whatsoever. Doesn't put up the greatest numbers, and so Oliver Ekman-Larsson had a great year last year. Benoit Simon is whatever. Anthony Stolarz had a little bit of a rough stretch down there. I don't know. Is he looking for a contract, or I think they gave him one in the $3 million range or something like that. Could look at moving him. And they have some young goaltenders there that they've been really happy. Aktimiakov or whatever his name is. He looked not too bad. Maybe they go that direction. But no. Oh, easy ways. So somebody might offer him a contract. Hello, Edmonton Oilers. So here's what I would do. Short of, I've seen lots of people saying like Carlo and whoever for someone, or like maybe Morgan Riley they free up space with Morgan Riley. I've heard San Jose Sharks might be interested. He's got a full no movement clause, so he's going to have to agree to wherever you go. I don't think you're getting much of a return there. I would be looking to do this. I would go down to the free agent market and I would look for guys like, well, first of all, the big one for me would be Marchment. He is from Ontario. Mason Marchment. He is from Ontario. He made 4.5 last year. He's only 30 years old, not bad. You've got $22 million. And, maybe you can get him for 6 in this cap world. I would hope that you can. But with the free agent market the way it is, who knows? But if you can get a guy like Mason Marchment, the only thing about getting Mason Marchment is it's almost guaranteed he's going to have some sort of trade protection. Because with the market the way it is, there's going to be a lot of teams looking for guys like him. And he's one of the better guys on the market. So they're going to be, looking for trade protection, offering him trade protection. If he finds a no movement clause altogether, I might just fade off of it, because what I'm looking at here is trying to find players that you can move at the deadline if things don't work out. They're good enough that they can help your depth. You turn things around, different attitude, different person, different way of looking at the future. I picked Toronto Maple Leafs to miss the playoffs last year. You can see it in my video and my predictions down. You have to scroll down and you can see in my video I picked them to miss the playoffs. The main reason why I picked them to miss the playoffs was because after Marner left and they just got Waugh and stuff like that, my thinking was it's really hard when you haven't won, have high expectations, and you get 20 games in and you look around the room and you realize we're not as good as we were last year. What are we doing here? And seems to be kind of what happened. So this year, though, you got a fresh new look, maybe get some fresh players in, change your mindset, and possibly be able to realize that if you play as a team, who knows what you can do. That it's just a change of mindset. But if you can get Mason Marchment, I would be on that. I would just no more than 12 team, no trade list. If it's not working out, I think when Seattle traded him, they got a second and a fourth, which kind of worries me because a player like that should get a first somewhere. Which for me would obviously he would have said probably had sold Columbus. He wasn't planning on resigning there, or at least he wasn't willing to put pen to paper right away. So I don't know where he might want to go. Maybe it is Toronto because he is from that area and he always wanted to play for Toronto. And God, that'd be awesome. 10-team no trade list. And if it doesn't work out, you can move him. You can move him at the deadline. That's what I'm looking at here. That way, maybe you do get a first for him now all of a sudden. Now you got another first round pick. Now you can, start stocking up the cupboards. And while you're doing it, you're grabbing more guys like I can't say that they're going to be able to get all these guys, but Schwartz in Seattle, maybe he's from Saskatoon. I have a feeling Edmonton's going to have their hands in them because he's a Western boy and he might want to be closer to home. He's kind of slipped. He's about an average player. But he also has a pedigree about him. He won a cup in St. Louis. He's got the intangibles that people are looking for. He's like a leader type guy. All of those things usually have value at the trade deadline if you want to move him. And if you can pick him up without giving him any trade protection, that would be something I'd be looking at. Who else did I have here? I had Dickinson. Always valuable. I mean, Edmonton gave up a first for him for the run. Now, he could sign back in Edmonton again. I don't know. But if he's available, he's one of the best shutdown centers in the game. And they're going to need depth on that team. They're going to need somebody to replace Domi up the middle on that third line for sure. Having a shutdown guy like that, first of all, can help you make the playoffs. Second of all, come playoff time, you might be able to get a first for him too. And like I said, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to grab all these guys. But these are the type of players I would be looking at. Boone Jenner in Columbus. My gut says that he stays in Columbus. He's been there forever. I'm pretty sure they're going to want him unless, maybe he's just got tired of trying to bang that drum in Columbus. But that's a guy that would have value at the deadline if you weren't making the playoffs. But that's what I would do. I would grab guys like that, as many as you can with that $14 million. And if it's not working out, trade them. Now, the other one that is we have to talk about here. Bobby Mann. Yeah, the guy you already traded away. Probably not going to be able to do that. The other one that we can't help but talk about is Darren Radish. Darren Radish is making $1 million and some a year. I looked it up. Tampa's got like $14 million left. Now, there's on Twitter, it's not all you hear about, but you hear about it a lot. Oilers need a puck-moving defenseman. I mean, that's not just on Twitter. That's just obvious when you look at their lineup. I mean, Riley is the only guy they got. They got a lot of stone hands guys back there. And Tampa's not going to be able to sign Darren Radish, so we should give him $6 million a year. Well, you can try that, but I don't think Darren Radish is getting only $6 million a year. And this is why. He took a long time to develop. He was in the minors most of his career, not making huge. Tampa worked with them and worked with them and worked with them and didn't trade him away, believed in the guy. And then here he is. He has an incredible season where he's like almost a point-a-game player, or is a point-a-game player right at his contract year, which is a little bit concerning. He's 30 years old. So if you got to put yourself in on the mindset of a Darren Radish who has been with the organization his whole career. That organization has believed in him the whole way and helped him develop to where he is. There's a really good chance that a guy like Darren Radish would never make the NHL in a lot of organizations. They would have gave up on him. They would have moved him. He would have bounced around, which is a little more, it's tougher for development when you're going into different systems, different cities, that kind of stuff like that. Tampa Bay stuck with, and now he's, crushing it. Tampa Bay also has the advantage, of course, of being a no-tax state, which I think is too much stock is putting into that, because I lived in Canada and now I live in the United States. And the more I talked about people about the no-tax states, they just diversify the taxes elsewhere. Like food's taxed like crazy, or gas is taxed like crazy, or things are just more expensive in general, and they end up getting you some other ways. Property taxes, land taxes, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, the narrative is there's more money in your bank at the end of the day, and most people generally don't think about all the other exterior stuff. But Darren my gut says that Darren has a lot of loyalty to this team. And if anybody's going to get him in the 6 million range, it's probably Tampa Bay, not another team. I think he's likely going to be 7.5 in Tampa. If he goes elsewhere, who knows, man? He's the only significant defenseman on the market. And even though he is a high risk because he's a late bloomer or had one good year, there's so many teams looking for a defenseman with his skill set. So if Toronto's interested in him, you got to ask yourself, is he going to be able to do what he did in Tampa and Toronto? He's not going to have the same decor around him that he did. He's not going to have as much depth up front that he did in Tampa. You're talking about a whole different system, where in Tampa, he learned how to play that system in the minors. They play the exact same system in the minors as they do in the NHL. That's the reason why they can keep on bringing up these AHL kids, and they look like they know exactly what they're doing. So my gut says he's like, do I want to, unless I'm going to get the bag, like 9 million somewhere for 8 years, he'll probably stick at about 7.5. Now that would give Tampa Bay only like 4.5 million to work with to fill out their roster. So it might be them that goes, and we don't know which direction Tampa's going to go here yet. The 4 first-round exits, more than likely, I think they're just going to keep on banging that drum. And if they are, if Darren's willing to sign for 7.5, I think they probably get him. So he's probably off the market. Then you're looking at trades, and there's Olen Zellweger in Anaheim. Anaheim is stocked with defensemen right now. Olen Zellweger is not even playing in the playoffs, and I'm sure he's not happy about it. And I looked at his underlying analytics, and for a 20-some-year-old defenseman, it's not bad. He's a puck mover, and that's what they're saying. In fact, apparently Nylander and Matthews both together said that they need a puck-moving defenseman. And you got to remember, Matthews' contract is coming up. So what they do in this offseason is going to matter a lot. That's why I don't think they're going to tear it down, because, their bread and butter is still there. The sponsorship bread and butter, everything is Matthews. So they're going to try to make him happy. So you could look at trading, Messi value in Carlo. He's not a horrible defenseman. He's still a solid defensive defenseman. He's just making, what is he making? He's only making 3.4. He's only 29 years old. Like, I'm not saying you can't, there can't be value out there for a Brandon Carlo, But if you're going to get a guy like Zellweger, I think you're going to have to package more than that. But you could look at something like that. And again, Morgan Riley, I'm hearing over and over again that there's going to be talks with him about moving his contract. And if they do that, almost assuredly, they're going to try to throw. I bet you they toss 8.5 to 9 Radish's way. And I believe Radish is from Toronto. So maybe he's always dreamed to play for Toronto, but I mean, high risk paying all that money for a guy who's had basically one incredible year, and they've done it before. I wouldn't be totally surprised if they do it again. And if they do move Morgan Riley and somehow do so with not taking back any cap, then they can do what I already said and add maybe a player or two to fill out this depth here. But like Simpson, they don't really have picks, a second round pick and Carlo and somebody else for Zellweger. Anaheim's kind of under the gun with Zellweger because they haven't been playing him, and it's pretty obvious that he's going to have to move. So their leverage is not crazy, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are in on him. Whether they're able to get him or not, I don't know. But if they got him in their back pocket and they think Riley can go, I think that's an option, a direction that they may go. What do they have? And they also got Tristan Luneau coming up as well. Olin Zellweger, 22, minimum. He's a restricted free agent. And that might be him going, I want out. I'm a restricted free agent and you're not even playing me. I want to, you want to make money, man. Like you can't, how are you going to make a contract if you're not being played? And I don't think he's a bad defenseman. I think he's a good defenseman. So that would be a guy I'd be looking at doing. But for the most part, that's what I think I would do. I would try to get free agents that are like Schwartz and Marchman and stuff like that. Try not to give them trade protection. And if things go south and you don't make the playoffs next year, you got some assets to be able to pick up draft picks and try it again next year. Try to go get a Olin Zellweger, guys like that. The defense isn't going to be great. But honestly, right now, I think for the most part, Toronto's just about making the playoffs and then trying to allow that cap space, that cap to keep on going up and up and fill the roster. And that's what I think they're likely going to do. Now, I didn't even mention Stenberg. I mentioned having Stenberg in the lineup. From the scouts I talked to, Stenberg is more ready to play in the NHL right now than why do I always forget his name? It's crazy. McKenna. He's more ready to play right now than McKenna. So that would fill out one roster spot for now. I don't know how good he's going to be right out of the gate. Usually with guys like that, a 40, 50 point season ain't bad. But he's very mature, in a personality way. Apparently, he's doesn't seem like a kid. His attitude, where, and I'm not saying that's who they're going to take, but overwhelmingly from scouts they say McKenna needs another year for maturity, just as a human being, and for physical maturity and maturity in his game. The scouts that I watch on YouTube, and the Ron, who talks to scouts all the time, say that there are aspects of his game that are not going to translate well to the NHL. I know he's playing with men in college, kind of, but they're not NHL men. He can dangle and do things against those college guys way more than he can in the NHL. So he's a very perimeter player, and his 5-on-5 game is not strong. He really is awesome when he has room. And when he gets to the NHL, he's not going to have it. He's not going to have it. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to mature into a Kucherov or anything. I'm not saying that. Definitely not. But apparently Stenberg has it. He can play in tight. He and his compete level is crazy. He's got an awesome compete level. He can play. He's already if I imagine they're going to keep Nylander. I personally would look to trade him, but if they do keep Nylander, apparently the Stenberg kid is going to make him look foolish right off the bat. Like, this guy is very, very. I've never heard scouts talk about, except for like Leo Carlson got this a little bit when he got drafted, about possibly being the next Barkov. Now, he's got a long way to go defensively to get there, but yeah, I heard about that. I'm hearing this about Stenberg as a winger, like that good the upper echelon of a shutdown winger that can get you 90 points. And he's very mature, like he's adult already, not just physically more mature, and just plain more mature. He's grown up a little more than, yeah. So if they take him, that's fine. If you're taking McKenna, from what I understand, if you play him next year, you're going to hurt the kid. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be healthy for him. Those scouts could be wrong. He could come out and just blow the shit out of everybody. All I know is I look at his numbers in college, because I don't get to watch college all the time. I got to rely on, these are scouts that I've learned to trust in the past, because they've been accurate about a lot of stuff. All I know is that you put 52 points in 31 games in college, you got half. I mean, that is freaking, as a 17-year-old, to me, that just seems nutballs, man. Like, that is crazy. So it's hard for me to imagine what these scouts are saying, but they are usually correct. They're usually correct. These are the same scouts that were, like I said, they same scouts that were taking Carlson over Fantilli when everybody was on Fantilli, and Verbeek eventually did take Carlson over Fantilli. And these scouts that I know, like, I don't know them, but I listen to them, were all saying that Carlson will be a better player than Fantilli, almost for sure, in his career. And sure as heck, here we are. There they are. So that's what they're saying. That's kind of what I think. If you're going to do this in Toronto, you got to do. You got to just pick up guys that you can trade at the deadline if you have to. If you're in it, if you're in the middle of it, you keep them, have them on like a 3-year window, and it's working out, and you can keep on adding to, play a depth type roster with Matthews and stuff like that. If Chayka really is an analytics guy, and he can find, like, Mason Marchment's got good analytics, but, do what Dubas is doing in Pittsburgh, and they pick up guys like I was screaming for other teams to do, namely the Edmonton Oilers, to get Shinnikov before the season started. I couldn't believe all they gave up was a second and fourth for that guy. It's like, doesn't anybody have an analytics department? I'm sure Florida was in there, but they had no cap space whatsoever. Really surprised maybe Tampa wasn't more into it, but they don't really have the draft capital. So I think maybe the really strong analytics team just didn't have the draft capital or the space, apart from maybe New Jersey. But, Pittsburgh was all over it, and sure as heck, it turned out really well. Look what he went and got Novak from Nashville for nothing, man. gave Mantha a shot, who's always been a really good analytics guy, but he just can't stay healthy. He's out there too, by the way. They could look at that. The only problem is Mantha in the past has shown that he has great years on contract years, and then that's it. He's injured the next year or something, and he just doesn't have the same intensity. So, I mean, that's buyer beware there. They went out and got Kindle, moved up the draft in what was considered a weak draft, moved up and got Kindle, and that kid puts up 40 points. Like, the benefits of a really strong analytics team is huge. And if Shaka, I don't know anything. I know what he did in Arizona when he got Stepan, was a huge analytics guy, but he was like 30-some years old. He made some moves that were kind of, I don't know. So we'll see. And I don't even think he's been named as general manager. But that's my full 42. That's what I think. That's what I would do if I had a mandate from my owner and stuff that we're not rebuilding, we're retooling, just like they said. And I have little cap space, no prospects hardly, not much draft capital. The way I see it is the only way to go about it is try to grab some value free agents, try to get their numbers up. Maybe you can make the playoffs with them. And if you don't, you can trade them at the deadline for seconds, firsts, or whatever, and then try it again next year. If you're right out of it. And if you're on the bubble and you give them like 3-year deals at $6 million or something like that, if you're on the bubble of the playoffs and you say, look, we got to make the playoffs, and you don't trade them there, you can either do so in the summer, or you can wait. The cap will go up. You get more cap, and you can add more to have a team with Matthews and Nylander, if you keep them, which looks like they are. Nylander, Stenberg, Tavares, you got some top 6 guys, and you can load it with like 3 guys, third line guys that can play hopefully as full sheet as possible. Play, no floaters like Max. If you can get rid of Max Domi, can't have any more floaters. You already got Nylander. You can't have any more floaters than that. That's why I think you don't take McKenna. If, from what I'm understanding with the way McKenna plays, but maybe they do. I don't know. Okay, that's my full 42. I have a show tonight I have show every night at 10:30-ish usually Eastern time, called Rico and Perlo's House of Exotic Jaime's Picks Frolic, where we go over every game and show you how handicappers pick their picks for the day. It's pretty interesting, even if you're not a bettor. And we talk about hockey, and we do all of that stuff like that. I also, if you go to Perlo's NHL POW right here, I have a winnable where I give people NHL picks. I'm up somewhere around 400 to 700 units a year, which a unit, if you're betting $10 a unit, would be $10 a pick, or like, I can explain it to you. You get put in a Discord and you can ask me questions and I'll explain it to you. But if you're betting $100 a unit, you'd be up a shit ton of money. $7,000. 10 would be 710 would be 7,000. So 70,000. Yeah. Tons of money. And it only costs you, if with promo code Jaimes12, you can get a full calendar year of baseball and NHL for $150. Without the promo code, it's $250. It's 40% off. Talk to you later, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the content. Comment in the comment section what you think Toronto should do. Give me some trades that maybe Toronto might make. That would be interesting. I love listening to trades. Give me who you think should be the number 1 pick and why. Who, should they rebuild? Should they not? all of those things. Comment in the comment section. Let me know. I always talk to anybody who comments down there. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Tap that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.